It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you.
Welcome into the Sports Blitz today on a nice, warm, sunny Friday morning. I am Weldon Braxton, your host today, joined by Mattie Lasiter, who is not behind the controls today.
Right.
You actually get to see his face.
And Mark's not here, so let's party.
Oh, we're going to show out today.
Oh,
When
yeah.
Mark's not here, we're going to show out. No script, no notes, just whatever comes to your mind, say it.
It could be really good or really, really bad.
We don't have to adhere to FCC airways, so we can just do whatever we want. That means, Mattie, if you're not here, then who's behind the controls?
That would be David Brown.
That is Dave
Rocking
Brown,
the controls.
our unofficial intern. now when we
My
talked,
apprentice.
Your apprentice. That's right. When we talked about getting an intern, Mattie, that Dave's not exactly what I had in mind when I figured we'd get an intern. Some of these other shows I see and hear their interns, and we got a little bit different one. But Dave's one of the big timers here at RVL. You can catch his content on rivervalleyleader.com. So Mattie, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk some sports, some World Cup. That's what we're going on
Are you
today,
really?
Everybody. World Cup.
You got the
No,
US?
I am going to watch.
Sunday.
No, I
yeah.
don't have the U.S. winning any more games because I don't know anything.
Oh,
But I know, is it Josie Altidore?
Yeah,
He's
Altidore.
hurt, and he was good.
yeah.
And now they're playing who I've heard is the best player in the world for Portugal,
Yeah.
Ronaldo.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things. I don't know enough about soccer to know, but that doesn't sound great.
And as I'm not a huge soccer fan. I'm a little bit better than I was. I imagine you're not huge into it either. But you look at the team, you just look at the roster, and you see Altidore. You're probably like, okay, now that guy kind of looks like he's can play full athlete. Like he can play another sport.
Yeah.
Unlike most of the other guys. So that's gonna be a challenge for him. But Mattie, Mark and I talked about this the other day, and I think he saw it a little bit different. I'm gonna get your take on it. For me, when I watch, U.S. soccer, for instance, it's different from a fan standpoint because I feel like we're playing the world's game. And I feel like, it's always nice when you can beat somebody at their own game, the game you're supposed to be counted out. And when basketball, it's one of those, it's like, I'm watching it, we should win, we better win, and we win, it's more of a relief as opposed to, we won the gold.
And I'm like that in most even like Olympic sports. When I'm watching the Olympics that come on every 4 years, Summer Olympics, I'm like that. Like I want us to win everything.
Yeah.
Unless there's just a sport that just one country is just dominated, then it's one thing where it's like I just want us to compete. But all those other sports, I want us to win.
Yes.
Even in hockey, I want the USA to win and beat Russia.
Exactly. One of the heavy hitters in hockey, too. Because, I think there's just a lot of value in it because, to be honest with you, I heard Casey Keller, former goalkeeper for the U.S., he's now an analyst on ESPN. He said he was talking with some of his European friends, and he's like, well, you guys are the only people, you Americans, who play your own sport, talking about the NBA and the NFL, and you call it world champions, but you don't play anybody outside the world.
I've always thought about that, too.
Yeah.
Like, who world champions? Well, I guess we have, Toronto.
Yeah. And it kind of gets to you a little bit. They're right, but in terms of, they view soccer or football as the world's game. So I'd like to say, if this is what you call the world's game, let me show you we can play it too. So.
Yeah, and going back to calling our championships world championships, when we play now. There was the before the Redeem team that was bad,
right?
Okay,
04.
But that was the worst team that you could have possibly put together for a U.S. Olympic team. So let's just put that to the side. Just ignore that ever happened. We beat them, all of them. So I don't know. I get calling it the World Championship is a little like, well, you're not playing the world. It's just the NBA and it's all within the continental U.S. and all this, But we're better than all of them.
Exactly.
They can't compete. So it's like, well, if you could compete, then we would let one of your teams in. But when we play your teams in the Olympics, we beat all of you.
Exactly.
Your country teams, you don't even have enough in your entire country to beat ours. So it's like, why would we want to? So, that's a little bit of
you look,
patriotism there.
I heard a scout one time, an NBA scout, or really a basketball scout, looks for talent all over the world, college basketball, international. He said that you could rank NCAA basketball as the third toughest league in the world. I think there's a Spanish league. I think the league that Rubio and a lot of those guys played in. Ginobili, even though he's from Argentina, he played in it. That league is better than college basketball. They beat college teams.
Yeah.
But other than that, college basketball is the closest thing to the NBA of any other pro league in the world. And so, yeah, I don't have a problem calling it a world championship. I mean, I know it sounds a little bit arrogant, but at the same time, those club teams can't beat our club teams. And that's really where it boils down to. So, we'll look more into championships and some NBA talk. A lot going on that front, Mattie. The NBA draft is coming up less than a week, 6 days from now.
Shake-up.
A lot of shake-up. Joel Embiid, the Kansas sensational big man. We've talked about his back injury, and believe it or not, he hadn't gotten out of it, but teams are feeling a little bit confident in that back. But as soon as he gets over one hurdle, here comes another. He's got a foot injury. He's going to have it worked on. Mattie, how do you see Joel Embiid right now?
Well, I heard that the Cleveland Cavaliers worked him out, and there were no red flags, of course, prior to his broken foot. But with his back, we don't have a lot to go off of on any of these top three guys. But speaking of Joel Embiid, we've had 1 year, and he was injured for part, so it's kind of one of those things like, oh no, this kid hasn't even been here for an entire year, and he's already getting hurt. But then he didn't have any red flags in his workout with the Cavaliers, which was good for him. Everything I've seen, I like the kid. But if I were a GM of a team, I don't know how I would feel about a guy who seems to be bird bones. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he seems just a little bit frail, and he kind of looks it. And if he wasn't, if he looks one way and he doesn't have a history of injuries, then that's one thing.
Right.
But he looks that way.
And he is.
Yeah, and he is that way. So it doesn't give you much confidence. And
I agree. And it's a shame because I think he's the best talent in this draft. I know we look at an Andrew Wiggins, coming in. He was kind of like, the can't miss LeBron type prospect. But really, Joel Embiid showed the talent. But I agree with you from a health standpoint, you just can't trust it. So, the draft is interesting. There's a lot of very good players in there that we'll get to, and we'll break this thing down. If you have a player you want to ask about, feel free to call us up at 968 News. Voice is killing me. This is what happens when you host a show and you're the lead man. You got to get your water. But we got our CrossFit Russellville poll question, which deals with the Arkansas Razorbacks. And I know that's something a lot of you at home, you can't wait to get to. You suffered through Mark and I talking NBA for so long. You're like, let's get to some football. Let's get, forget the NBA. Yay, LeBron lost. Let's do something else. I know that's what a lot of you are thinking. Mattie's kind of like Mark. He's a Heat fan. Can't blame them, but those Heat haters out there. They're lurking out there. NBA free.
They're not lurking anymore. They're out. In
they're partying now.
Yeah, yeah, they're down on the Riverwalk right now.
But I want to hit NBA free agency. Kevin Love obviously is on the trade block from Minnesota as well. But I want to get to our CrossFit Russellville poll question. What's the biggest key to long-term success for Brett Bielema at Arkansas? That is today's CrossFit poll question. Want you to weigh in on that on Facebook or just give us a call. Do what you need to do to let us know. Arkansas landed a couple of big recruits. C.J. O'Grady, one of the better tight ends in next year's class from Fayetteville. Look, I coach college football. I break down these huddle games probably 24 a day. C.J. O'Grady is an SEC caliber tight end. Mattie, it's not one of those things where it's like, he's an in-state kid. He's a little bit better than Division II. We could let him go to UCA or ASU, but we'll just take him. Sometimes with an in-state Arkansas player, that's kind of the case. I'm just being honest.
That is not it.
That's what it is. He's a real deal. He's one of those that, the USCs, the Alabamas, the Floridas, everybody across the country, they're coming in, showing interest in this kid. I think it's a huge get for the Hogs. Also, they got Jordan Jones, a 2016 receiver from Smackover. So, Mattie, we've talked about the weapons that Arkansas needs. We feel good about the line and running backs, but we also have those perimeter weapons.
Yeah, and I mean, like you were talking earlier, it kind of, Arkansas won that ESPN contest or Razorback U. We were talking about tight end U.
Right.
And Arkansas has had a history of very good to great tight ends. We had Mackey Award winners And so seeing a guy like Hunter Henry come in and then a guy like CJ O'Grady come in with it's Sprinkle still there. Is that right? Yeah. So having those three guys, being able to move them around, I like the flexibility because you see, to me, and maybe it's just because he's young, he needs to put on some more weight, but Hunter Henry seems more the receiver type of tight end,
right?
Than the blocking type tight end. So that Brett Bielema has to have that blocking type tight end, big guy. And CJ is 6'4", 230, so he's about my size, so he could stand to put on some muscle too. But I wonder if that's his plan, if that's Bielema's plan to bulk up some of these guys and get them to where they're just monsters in blocking,
Yeah, when you look at this system, Mattie, go back a little bit to Wisconsin. You didn't see it as much last year. They didn't have the personnel, but Coach Bielema offensively, when he's got what he likes to have, he likes to do a lot of shifting in motion. A good example is if you watch Stanford the last few years. They shift in motion more than any team in college football. They're moving tight ends in the backfield, on the end line, moving them out. And you're right about Hunter Henry. He really is obviously more of a receiver type. In fact, that's what he was in high school. He was a big receiver for Coach Kelly.
He's got the hands for it too.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. He played for Coach Kelly at Pulaski Academy. Obviously, they're playing wide open style of football, and so you look at him, C.J. O'Grady. You mentioned Sprinkle. I mean, Arkansas's got a real chance to be what Coach Bielema wants, Mattie, and that's what we've talked about. And our poll question has to deal with, what's the key for Brett Bielema to succeed? I'll just go ahead and say I want to see him put his thumbprint on it. Whether or not you agree in terms of whether he runs the ball too much or, he's too this or, it's not exciting. The man won football games. And if you hire him to do that at Arkansas, let him do what he wants to do. If he falls on his face and he gets fired, he falls on his face. At least he did it his way.
If he gets his guys and they just suck, then okay.
Yeah,
the system
exactly.
doesn't work. But, all these people, even after last year, of course, they were going to come out of the woodwork. Oh, we got to get rid of Bielema. Oh, we got to deal with Bielema. We're going to have another 3-9 season, all this on and on. And you know what? We may have another 3-9 season. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But, but that's not the point. The whole thing for me, I want to see, like what you were saying, the thumbprint. I want to see the change in the team, even if the win total is not that different. If we don't even win 6 games, I'll be disappointed, obviously, because I want Arkansas to win all of them because we're fans. But I'll be okay because I just want to see that progress. And we saw it last year, even towards the end of the season, that LSU game. It was there.
Right.
So that made me feel good, even though, again, we lost that game. We lost all SEC games. But I just want to see that progress towards Bielema's style of play because we saw it work. Arkansas played a Bielema team. I think it was in 2006 and got drummed pretty well. So we've seen it firsthand, on the other side of the field. So I like that. So
I think you're right. You remember last year, it's like middle of the year. Obviously, Arkansas is in the midst of their losing streak. They're in the midst of going what they would eventually become, winless in the SEC, and. There was a lot of talk about opening up the offense, and people looked at Chaney's background at Tennessee where they slung it around, and people were kind of connecting the dots saying, well, let's see some more of that. Let's do something to win games. And, I understand that, especially as a fan. You just want to see some success. You don't want to see yourself be the laughing stock of the SEC. And then Coach Bielema's response at the time really wasn't all that popular because essentially he said, look, I sat down with my staff. I kind of got in their face a little bit. I'm going to tell you all as fans and media, we're not going to change. We're not going to start doing something else just for a quick fix. Yeah. We're trying to build a foundation of being physical up front, run the football, being balanced, and you don't build that foundation if you run away from it the first sign of trouble.
Well, you don't bring a Brett Bielema in to coach and think. It's not a we've had this argument with Brad, and maybe he'll call in today.
A challenge.
Yeah, call in. But he was talking a lot about Gus Malzahn because he's a Gus Malzahn lover.
Right.
And there's reason to be.
Absolutely.
I like Gus Malzahn. When you bring him in, even to Arkansas, and kind of like a Petrino, the whole culture changes. You're going to win some games just on the scheme.
Right.
With Bielema, it's not the same way because the scheme that he has, you got to have big, strong dudes, and you can't just make those
appear. They are,
yeah. So it's one of those things like you got to, and I understood that going in. When you recruit a Brett Bielema, it's going to take a few years, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. But most people, I think, were upset because they got a taste of winning with Petrino, and they wanted to keep that, and I get it because it was a little panic for me when Petrino wrecked his bike and all that, if that's actually what happened. But when all that happened, where it's just like, oh no, we had a chance to be good, and we were good for these few years, and now what are we gonna do?
Yeah, you look at, and that's a really good point about Malzahn. I think if you said Malzahn was going to come in last year and take over last year's team, but they beat 3-9, no, I actually think they would have been better. But that's not the point. I think we would agree on that because you're absolutely right. You can take a Bobby Petrino system, which it's different than Bielema's, it's different than Malzahn's. But you look at what Coach Petrino did. You can take a guy, Casey Dick, a mediocre arm. As long as he has any kind of an arm, you put him in that offense. Obviously, he's going to put up numbers. Yeah. So you're going to look better instantaneous right there. But what I like about Coach Bielema, certainly more than I like even about Coach Nutter, Coach Petrino, is that he has an overarching philosophy. Brett Bielema, keep in mind, we talk about his offensive line, his running game. He's a defensive-oriented coach. And so it tells me that he has an overarching philosophy for the football team. It's not like under Coach Petrino where offensively you're where you need to be, and then defense it's kind of like, well, let's be basic, or let's just run whatever. You guys do what you do over there. Coach Bielema has a vision for the offense, a vision for the defense, and the special teams. And I think if you really want to have a chance to win SEC championships, I think that's the way you have to do it. I think Arkansas got close under Coach Petrino, but I think we agree they caught a lot of breaks those 2 years. Yeah. We can go down the
Mississippi
list.
State game keeps coming to my mind. We should have lost that game.
Yeah. Vanderbilt, how about that?
Yeah, the Vanderbilt game was a missed field goal, was it?
Yeah. How about what if Arkansas wasn't good? What if Arkansas had lost their first game under Bobby Petrino, which was against the Leathernecks from Western Illinois? Remember, Arkansas was down. They had to come back in the fourth quarter. And again, I'm not trying to knock Coach Petrino. He's one of the best offensive minds in the country. But I just think when you look at what Coach Bielema has done to be successful, and I know the feeling on him is down right now. I understand that. You were hoping he would get at least maybe 5-6 wins, and he ended up with 3. So I understand that. But the reason why people like Coach Bielema is because he had success doing more with less, which I think is what you have to do at this school.
And I'm not in Jeff Long's head, but I imagine this is how he felt. This is kind of how I felt when the whole Petrino stuff happened, is that Petrino had some very good teams, and we did. You have to catch breaks,
right.
Whoever you are. But we caught some huge ones that made a big difference in the win listing there, wins and losses columns. But I don't think, and this is probably a conversation or argument for another day, but I don't think that Petrino was ever going to get Arkansas to that level to actually win a championship, because he loaded up the offense so much with his best players, and the defense was just like, let's just make do.
Right.
And so I think this is the way I felt, and maybe this is the way Jeff Long felt after seeing that. It's like, we were good and we won 11, 10 games, things like that, but were we ever really going to get over the hump?
Yeah.
And if we weren't, then let's not try to reproduce that same thing again with another coach. Let's go a different direction and try to build that foundation like Bielema wants to, where you're going to be in it year in and year out. And like we were talking before when Mark was in the show, would you rather have a team that's winning 8-9 games every year and then has that 1 year to where they're extremely good, or would you rather have the high win every year with like the Petrino style, where you're never really going to be good enough to beat the Alabama and the LSU consistently? You're never going to do it all in 1 year. You're never going to put it together because you don't have the defense.
That's an excellent point. It's a really good point. You look at just what you have to be as a head coach in college football is so important. You can't just be a defensive only guy. Ask Will Muschamp. You can't just be, offense only. You have to have your hand in everything. You have to have everything expected at a high level. So that's good talk. We're going to get to hog talk a little bit after the break. Everybody brace yourselves. Dave Brown is about to take us to break for the first time in his career.
All right.
Don't be too hard on him. So when we get back, we're going to talk more Razorback talk, a little bit of NFL. We're going to get back to the NFL draft and look at some players specifically and whose stock is rising and whose stock is falling. So don't go away.
Hi, folks. Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
It's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance of rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
All right, welcome back into the Sports Blitz. Dave Brown working the controls back there, almost like a DJ. Yeah. Mattie Lasiter here with his glasses on. Got his little Clark Kent working here. And I'm Weldon Braxton. Mark Freeman is away at church camp. He has no reception, so we can talk about him. He won't even find out. Yeah. Or you know what? He could find out about it by watching the replay, which if any of your buddies, anybody, you think, you know what? This is a good show. They might want to go back and watch it. They can do it. They can go to rivervalleyleader.com and go and check that out. So we got so much going on today's show. I want to remind you that you can chime in on our CrossFit Russellville poll question. What's the biggest key to long-term success for Brett Bielema at Arkansas? Mattie and I weighed in on it heavily. If we have time, we may get back to it a little bit. But you want to look at the NBA, and some of you are like, oh, the NBA. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Free agency is hot, and it's not one of those things where it's going to be an all-summer deal, Mattie, because, it's not like these guys are unrestricted free agents, talking about the LeBrons, the Dwayne Wades of the world, the Carmelo Anthonys, Chris Bosh. I mean, they have to opt in within the next few days.
Yeah, it's going to happen here pretty quick. We're going to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so
which is good for everybody.
And that, of course, brings up the talk. Obviously, the big fish in the pond is LeBron James, looking at where his options may be. I say it all the time. The places you want to put LeBron, it just doesn't always make sense for people want to put him in these different places. I mean, look, LeBron James is making tens upon tens upon tens of millions of dollars with his off-court ventures. And so he is all about trying to win championships. So for him, it's not about, where can I go get that max money, that max deal. He's making his money.
He's not Carmelo.
Carmelo has a chance to prove himself. We're going to see on Carmelo this time around, which, of course, brings a lot of talk. Some people are trying to say Carmelo's getting down to Miami. They're going to try to make that work. I don't think that's a very good fit for a multitude of reasons, Mattie. But what do you think about free agency and how it may shake out?
Well, everybody, obviously, like we were just talking about, wants to know about the Heat and specifically LeBron. Now, obviously, he hasn't said anything about what he's going to do. He's going to take vacation and all that, And I watched most of the Pat Riley news conference yesterday, trying to get a feel for that. 'Cause, I'm kind of more like Mark, and I'll just be honest. I'm less of a Heat fan and more of a LeBron fan. I was a LeBron fan from when he first came in the league, so I was rooting for the Cavs all those seasons. Then he left. I've been rooting for the Heat since, and I like Bosh and Wade. But if it were Bosh and Wade and no LeBron and somebody else, I would still follow LeBron, wherever he goes. I'm not buying like Heat gear and swag and all that stuff, but I like them. I mean, I was pretty sad when they lost in the finals just, a week ago.
Yeah.
But what I really think will happen is I think that they will all opt out and restructure their contracts and that they will all stay. Because I can't imagine LeBron picking up to leave again, especially people are saying he's going to go to Cleveland. I don't buy that. I don't buy it.
No, the thing with the Cleveland Cavaliers and what you got to understand about LeBron James is he's a big fan of organizations. LeBron has to have confidence that you're stable up top, have to have confidence that you're going to do whatever it takes to bring players in and to make that roster as competitive as it can be. And you look at Cleveland, they've had so many draft picks, 5 top 3 draft picks in the last few years, including the number 1 pick coming up in this year's draft. They haven't exactly hit it out of the park. I mean, Anthony Bennett, jury's still out, but it's not looking good, coming off his rookie year. Dion Waiters is a good player, but from a chemistry standpoint, is it going to work with Kyrie Irving? They're having some clashes. Tristan Thompson's a really good player, but in terms of being a dynamic all-around player, not much there. He's going to rebound for you. He's going to play some interior defense, but obviously this draft pick, we'll see what they do with that. But overall, I don't know if that Cleveland organization is stable enough for LeBron, whereas you have maybe the most respected, or at least one of the most respected front office people in the game, in Pat Riley. He's won 7 world championships as a coach / executive over his career. The thing with the Miami Heat, though, and I think Dwayne Wade, maybe LeBron, they're a little bit upset, and it may not be with Pat Riley, but the top of that organization is that they made a lot of moves to save money. And look, I get it. They traded Joel Anthony and a draft pick just to get rid of Joel Anthony.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I think from a financial standpoint, you can understand it. But obviously, LeBron and Wade as players, they're saying, you know what? If you want us to take less money, you better not be pocketing. Yeah, you better not be pocketing it. You better be using it to pay. You got to pay some luxury tax to do whatever. That's kind of give and take sacrifice from each side. So I think a big part of it also, Mattie, is Dwayne Wade. What's he going to do? What money is he going to take, and what can he give you?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it really does all hinge. The other guys, what they do and what the organization ends up doing in the end, kind of hinges on Dwayne Wade. Because if Dwayne Wade is not willing, and I don't think this is going to be the case, but if he's not willing to restructure and take, instead of, I think it was 42 over the next 2 years, is it? If he opts in,
yeah.
If he's not willing to restructure that to, 4 years for 60, I think is what somebody said they would do. If he's not willing to do that and he just wants to take his 42,
right,
then I think that really will play into whether LeBron and Bosh are going to stick around.
Oh, I completely agree. And look, you just don't know what you're going to get from Dwayne Wade. I actually think really it's more of a fitness issue. I think if he dropped 10 pounds, I think it'd make a world of difference. But even with that, you just don't know, because he looked like a player who just had flat out lost it. I don't think he has, but that's the way it looked, and that's all you have to go on. And so, but I agree with you. I think they'll all opt out in order to restructure, because if they opt back in, the cap is going to be roughly $65 million, and they would take up 61.
You can't do that. You can't do it.
So, you look at who's out there. Talk about Trevor Ariza, which I think Trevor would be a good fit. They need somebody who can defend the opposing team's best player and it not be LeBron James. Dwayne Wade, not capable of doing that. Point guard standpoint, and here's how I feel about this, Mattie. A lot of talk about Kyle Lowry. I have a hard time seeing that. Even though he says he's interested in Miami, Kyle Lowry is one of the top 10 point guards in the game, roughly. He can have him a big payday somewhere, and usually guys in that situation, they want to make their money, and obviously Miami doesn't have where you can get, some other places. But I actually don't even think they need a guy like Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry, obviously he's going to be a dynamic point guard that can do a lot of things. I actually think you need a guy, and I've mentioned it before, like a Ron Harper was for the Jordan Bulls, that second run. Ron Harper didn't run the Bulls offense. You had Michael and Scotty that they ran the offense through.
You need a not terrible Chalmers.
You do.
That's what you need.
And see, that's what Chalmers was supposed to be. He was supposed to be a guy, because I think this is what they need out of a point guard. First of all, you have to be able to defend the opposing point guard, because there's Parker, there's Westbrook, there's Chris Paul, Derrick Rose when he comes back. There's just too many dynamic players. So you got to have a guy who can defend that position. Ron Harper used to defend that point guard position well. And I also think you have to have a guy who can knock down open shots. When LeBron drives and kicks to you, can you consistently hit? Chalmers, he struggled in that area. So we'll see how that turns out. It's really interesting what Miami will do and how it'll change the landscape of the league. Also, what could change the league's landscape is what happens with Kevin Love.
That's right.
The Minnesota Timberwolves, big man. The Wolves had a stance of, we're not going to trade him. We're not even looking. But I think they see the writing on the wall. First of all, he's probably going to walk after this year. In fact, he's definitely going to walk if they keep him. The draft is coming up, and usually a deal where big time players involved, a draft pick, the high one's involved, and of course the draft is 6 days away. That's why this talk is really getting heated up. You feel like something's going to happen. Mattie, there's a deal on the table. Roughly, it would be Golden State giving up Klay Thompson and David Lee in exchange for Kevin Love, and I'm sure there'd be some other things. So there'd be no draft picks involved, but what do you think about that deal when you hear it?
Well, that's scary to me because you see the stats that Love puts up.
Right.
And you can't deny that, but we've only ever seen him there. And we don't know. I haven't watched enough of him playing to really say. I don't want to, disparage the
I got
guy.
you.
But he does not seem like a game changer to me. I wouldn't be willing to give up a bunch of my players or draft picks for a guy who's very good, but he's going to put up his stats. But is he going to be a game changer? Is he going to take you where you want to go? And maybe he is, but I don't see that. I don't know. I mean,
that is a tremendous point. I'm really glad you brought it up, and I've talked about this with Mark all the time. There's a group of players in the NBA right now that can flat out stuff a stat sheet, but I don't think they can take you anywhere. Kevin Love's at the top of that list. I would add a guy like a DeMarcus Cousins. Dare I say even an Al Jefferson. I mean, Al Jefferson. They were getting swept by Miami anyway. I mean, some people, they may have got it to a fifth game and won one, maybe, but I doubt. Al Jefferson, he's scoring 28 points, 15 boards every other night. DeMarcus Cousins, same thing, 30 points, 20 rebounds, just these ungodly stats. But I don't think they're making guys better. Kevin Love's in that same mold. They're just stat sheet stuffers that don't make guys better. I will say this for Golden State, and I can see why they're looking at it. Golden State. I think they're looking in the mirror and they're starting to see that their ceiling is a little bit lower than what they had hoped. The Curry-Thompson dynamic duo in the backcourt is good enough to get you the 4 or the 5 seed in the West, but they know they need to do something if they want to get to the top of the West and possibly win the whole conference. And so I see this, Mattie, as a move to where we love Klay. He's a good partner with Steph, but we got to do something to raise the upside.
And especially, I think, for them because of who just won.
Yeah.
Having the Spurs just won.
Yeah.
They haven't beaten the Spurs in San Antonio 31 games.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the streak right now. So if you're going to be in a series against them, you need to be able to beat them on their home court one time, and not 31 in a row of losing. So it's kind of one of those things like, they're very good, but not good enough. So I understand the thinking to make that change, but I don't think that Love is the guy.
I agree with you. He's got to show me he's a transcendent player, and I don't know if I see it. And, of course, the other side of the deal is Minnesota. I mean, we understand they have to get some sort of form of an asset. Klay Thompson's a guy who he's a really good player. They're going to need some more, though. I mean, the backcourt is now going to have Rubio and Klay Thompson. I think one problem for Minnesota is Ricky Rubio is not quite progressing the way they thought he would.
Yeah.
In fact, his jump shots regress. He came in the league, really good defender, get out in passing lanes, obviously really good passer, and the jump shot was kind of hit and miss, but they thought, it'll develop.
Yeah.
It'll come. And actually, he's still getting the steals. He's still getting the assists. The jump shot's gotten worse to the point to where there's a lot of nights where he has 8 points, 9 assists, and maybe 3 steals, which is nice. But if he's going to be your franchise point guard, he's going to have to come a little bit more in his development. And
obviously he's a great ball handler, but that fancy stuff doesn't work when people don't think you can shoot.
Yeah,
so it's like, well, you can do all that stuff, but we know you're going to pass it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you do shoot, we go ahead, take that jump shot type thing. So he's going to have to develop that. But I mean, it seems to me that Minnesota is kind of a graveyard up there.
Yeah.
And poor Kevin Garnett was stuck there for so long.
Oh, yeah.
Immediately when he got out, he won a championship. So it's just like, it's one of those things. So.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. And, some people compare Rubio to Rondo. For me, Rondo's different. Yeah, he's not a consistent shooter either, but he's a little bit better than Rubio as a shooter. And he's a better floor general. That's one thing with Rubio is I don't see him command the team. I don't know if it's a language barrier or if he's just because he's young. But, Rondo runs a team. When he has a team, he runs it. In fact, I'm going to just say this. I don't think I would pick a guy to run my team more than Rondo. I know Chris Paul is acknowledged as the best point guard. I actually think Tony Parker I would take him ahead of Chris Paul. But as far as just running my team bare bones, Rondo is that dude. And he kind of got to where he and the veterans in Boston, they didn't quite like that. It started to clash and they broke up. But I like that Rondo's that leader. I like that Rondo is vocal and he doesn't take anything off. So to me, that's why I would still take Rondo over Ricky Rubio, who is also somebody to watch for. Boston may deal him as well. So that's our NBA free agency talk in the offseason. But when we come back from break, we are going to continue in the NBA, not with the players who are in the league now, but the ones who will be coming in starting next Thursday. Yes, the NBA draft. Mattie and I already talked about Joel Embiid.
Marshall Henderson.
Yeah,
number 1 pick.
Marshall Henderson, number 1 pick in the CBA league.
That's right.
But, we're going to look at Wiggins, Parker, Vonleh, who's jumping up. There's a guy who's now jumped in the top 10, as well as some more draft talk and hog talk. All that when we come back, so please get back in front of that screen.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. We've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too. Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. We've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russell and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
Bringing it home today on a Friday on the Sports Blitz. I am Weldon Braxton. Mattie Lasiter normally produces the show, but he's done a sensational job. He's sitting in front of your monitors right now. Give him a hand. He's done a really good job. Filling in for Mark Freeman, who is away at church camp. Dave Brown, smooth. You can't even tell there's any issues with the commercial breaks. That's because Dave Brown is doing such a good job. So, Mattie, before we went to break, we were talking NBA free agency. I think that's more of a wait and see at this point. We'll just see how the chips fall. But coming up next Thursday, 6 days away, the NBA draft. We've talked about Joel Embiid, broken foot. He's going to slide some. The question is how far. And I'll just start right there with you, Mattie. At what point does it become worth it? What pick, is it at 10 or 15? At what point of your team you're going to say, you know what, we're going to pull the trigger?
Well, first off, I'm looking in this draft for the next Darko. I want to know where he is right now.
Well, there's a Dario in the first round.
Okay, there you go. But no, man, it really is tough because you see the potential that a guy like Embiid has. If he stays healthy, he can be a complete franchise changer.
Right.
He can develop into an Olajuwon type guy. I mean, he's had those comparisons, and from what I've seen of him playing, I get it. It makes sense to me.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's not as much like a Greg Oden situation where he's just really big and really tall and really strong and type thing to where you don't know. But with him, he's got the potential to really develop into something. So it's scary to say, well, I'm not going to take him at all in my first pick,
right,
when he could be, and you don't know about these other guys either. So it is scary, but I don't know. If I were Cleveland, I wouldn't pick him.
Yeah,
if he has a broken foot and he's had back injuries and whatever else he had when he was in college for 1 year, I wouldn't do it because that's you don't get the first pick every year. Well, you do if you're them, I guess. But you know what I mean. That doesn't come around all the time. So I wouldn't.
It's hard to say.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah. The first two to me, it's out. You have two standout guys who are ahead of the pack at 1 and 2, and I think and there's still some risk. Andrew Wiggins, is he going to be the guy people say he's going to be? Jabari Parker, obviously physically his issue with his weight. I think he'll be fine there, but the upside is a little bit lower than Wiggins. But still, they're far and away ahead of the other two. I think at 3, that's kind of where people have his floor. I would still be hesitant. I think if he gets to you at LA at 7, if Julius Randle, especially if Randle's off the board and you don't love anybody else, you look at it. Interesting, Philadelphia, they've got 3 and 10. So if you pass on him at 3 and he somehow falls to you at 10, I think you look there. Then if you get further down to the teams that made the playoffs, so obviously you're talking about a good organization that's got good players. It would hurt if he ended up not panning out, but you still have a foundation. You're still a playoff caliber organization. So that's, to me, would be the floor. It's just really hard to say. It's really hard to invest that pick in him because you brought the point up. It gets to a point to where you're no longer just, he had that back issue. It's now starting to seem like you're a chronic injury-prone type guy. And that's nothing you ever want. So Joel Embiid is somebody who we'll want to watch and monitor and see who's going to take the plunge. I also thought it was interesting, Marcus Smart. Smart was a guy who it's almost coming full circle. Last year, if he had entered the draft, he would have been a top 2 pick. If Cleveland didn't have the pick last year, or then he would have been number 1. But obviously with Kyrie, he wouldn't have gone. But he would have been second probably. This year, we know about the incident against Texas Tech.
Yeah, that's how I found out about him.
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was till then. I was like, oh, yeah, and he's actually apparently a pretty good basketball player, too.
Well, that's never a good thing when people find out about you because you got an incident. But coming after the season, he's kind of in that 8 to 10 range. But now it looks like he's ascended himself to possibly being a top 5 pick. So, Mattie, I'm looking. You got a mock draft up on your screen, right?
Yeah, I got the NBA draft up.
When you look at this top 10, what are some things that stand out that you see?
Dante Exum from Australia.
Yeah,
they have him going to Boston, and that's the first I've seen that. But I wonder how a guy like his skill set will translate, because we've seen, not that he's the European player, like a Thiago Splitter and all these guys. You know, but you've only seen a few that have been real impact type players come over. Thiago Splitter is a good and serviceable guy. I don't want to
Thiago.
Yeah, and Ginobili obviously has been very good, and you can name a few like Dirk, and things like that. But the rest of them, they've Rubio. They're not superstars, even if they're supposed to be. So it's a little scary to me when you haven't seen him play, here at home. It's again, we were talking about this earlier about which league is better, and about the NCAA being maybe 3rd on that list. Yeah, but I don't know where Australia would rank on there. It's a little scary.
And here's the thing with that. I agree. Drafting international players high is always a risk. It's something that I don't love to see. I'm going to give Exum a little bit of a benefit of the doubt for a few reasons. First of all, he did play internationally and look good against U.S. competition of his own age. And he was a guy who really thought about coming over and being a one and done. And if he had played at a Carolina or a Kansas or a Duke, he would have been on center stage. He would have been one and done. Mm-hmm. And we would kind of feel like he's Wiggins or Parker or somebody like that. So that's what the projections of him were. Obviously, he didn't do that. So the questions are still out there. He's athletic. He's 6'6". He's explosive. So you typically don't see that from international players, and so the questions are there. I think he'll get himself in the top 5, especially with the questions about Joel Embiid, and so it's a risk, but maybe not so much. But I'll tell you what a pick I don't like. And which mock draft do you have up?
It's the NBADraft.net one from yesterday, I guess it was.
We got the same one. Well, I'd be curious to see what another one said, because Zach LaVine is a guy who didn't even play. He played quite a bit, but he really wasn't an impact player at UCLA, but he's a projected top 10 pick. Drawn a lot of comparisons to former UCLA point guard Russell Westbrook as far as athleticism, his size.
Be careful with that.
Just freakishly explosive. So he's getting a lot of Westbrook comparisons. I just hadn't seen enough. I saw Westbrook play in big games in college. I saw him go head-to-head with Derrick Rose. And, Rose got the better of him, but you could still see, this dude is big time. I would have liked to have seen another year from LaVine. I'm hesitant there, Mattie. And a guy I like in the top 10, and I hope he doesn't become overrated, is Nick Stauskas from Michigan. If you think he's just J.J. Redick who's going to spot up and shoot, you're wrong. First of all, he's a couple inches taller. He's bigger than Redick.
He's proven he can create his own shot.
Exactly. He can flat out handle the basketball. He's from Canada, went to Michigan. Nick Stauskas is a player I really like, Mattie, because he's not just a spot up guy. He can create his own shot, as you said.
And you don't find pure shooters like him all the time. Right. I think it was him who made a YouTube video where he actually ended up getting recruited by Michigan in the first place, where he was just making insane shots, you know. And I think it was an uncut video type thing. So when you see that, even though he's in his backyard and that's a completely different setting, I get it.
Yeah.
But when you see somebody who's just that pure of a shooter, then you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the NBA or wherever. So I like that pick, and having seen him play too in the tournament, like we were talking just a minute ago, he can create his own shot. He's not just a spot up shooter. He's not Danny Green as much, although Danny did surprise me a few times.
He surprised me too.
He did, but yeah, he's not a Danny Green guy. He can create his own shot, and he's not a little guy either.
Exactly.
So I think he could be one of those surprise guys, and as a rookie in the NBA that people are like, whoa, this guy can shoot the lights out type thing, and so I'm excited to see him.
I completely agree. And one thing about the draft, Mattie, is a lot of years you look at the top heavy draft, you get to the bottom towards the playoff teams. A lot of times international players that are going to stash away or some developmental project, towards the bottom of the first round. That's not the case. You're going to see a lot of help, which I always like to see who goes to playoff teams. And you look right now, James Young, one of the better, 2-3 type players in the country as far as that small forward shooting guard type. He's going to go to a playoff team somewhere in the 20s. Tyler Ennis, who at one time was a mid-teens pick, he could slip to a playoff team. C.J. Wilcox, who can flat out shoot the ball from Washington. I know we haven't seen him a lot in this part of the country, but nationally people recognize him. Glenn Robinson III could have been a lottery pick last year if he had come out. He's coming back this year. He could fall in the 20s. How about the most outstanding player from the NCAA tournament, Shabazz Napier? He's likely going to fall to a playoff team. The guy, to me, who I thought may have been the best all-around player in college basketball, Adrian Payne, likely will fall to a playoff team. And so I always like to see when these well-known, really good players fall into situations where they're on playoff teams.
Yeah, it's just looking through. I watch Arkansas play.
Yeah.
So I see the guys that, are on the teams opposing Arkansas and, tournament teams. If they make it very far, then you get into watching the tournament and you get to know a Nick Stauskas and Adrian Payne. You see them. So it's one of those things. But a lot of these guys, I actually recognize their names, which is interesting. So, and haven't seen even a Doug McDermott at 16.
Yeah.
And I like Doug.
Best player in the country.
Yeah. So, Clay Anthony Early.
Yeah,
great name also.
Clay Anthony.
But there are a lot of names that I recognize, which just for a fan like me who doesn't, I'm not an avid NCAA basketball watching fan. I think that does say something when they're not just a bunch of guys that you've never heard of in the bottom of the first round of the draft. So,
and you're going to see some guys who they're going to fall. Some bigger names are going to fall to the second round. I even look at a Jordan Adams. I know on draft.net they've got him 27th to Phoenix. Maybe one of the better pure scorers coming out in this draft. There's limitations, defensively, ball handling here and there, but overall natural scoring ability. He's a top 20 player, and he's going to fall towards the end of the first round. So, really, really good players. Obviously, the reason I talk about playoff teams is because if you're a Miami fan, they're obviously rebuilding. They might get some help. It may not just be some developmental random dude. They may get somebody to help them win a championship.
Yeah.
And so you don't see that often. So we'll continue to monitor the draft. When Mark gets back on Monday, we'll get into it a little more. And then obviously Wednesday, I would anticipate we hit it pretty hard as the draft will be the following day. But Mattie, this is typically our Hog Talk segment where we talk about the Arkansas Razorbacks. And you mentioned they were named Position U. And we touched on this a little bit, running back U as far as the position. Yeah. And what that is an ESPN deal where they have a formula here. You can go on ESPN.com and see the formula, and it came out to where Arkansas is named running back U. It goes back to 2000, so that's obviously we're looking at the Cedric Cobbs, the Fred Tallies. We remember a guy like a Chris Chikuma, even though nationally it's more about the McFadden and the Joneses of the world. But Arkansas running back U.
Yeah, and I don't think that we should discount the impact that has. Of course, it's just an ESPN thing. ESPN is huge.
People listen to ESPN.
And I think I was talking to somebody the other day where you're going to start seeing that running back U on all kinds of stuff. Shirts, gear, inside the stadium, and all this type of stuff. So I think that's huge when you're talking to top running backs and say, look who we have now and look who we've had and where they are now.
Exactly.
Or we had three guys on the same team, 1, 2, and 3. They're all in the NFL and have been successful too. So I think that is a huge thing to win that when you're in Arkansas. Yeah. Because that's something you would expect. People were talking about Oklahoma because they had Adrian Peterson. I get that. People were talking about Alabama because of the long list of running backs they've had in the past several years. But when you are, Arkansas, who hasn't been winning national championships and been going to them, and been in a bunch of BCS games, we've been in one. I think that's huge for us for recruiting, which I love that.
I completely agree. I mean, Arkansas has done a very good job, Coach Bielema and company, of branding itself. You look at some of the slogans they have, Tex Hogs, to try to appeal to those Texas kids to, draw that pipeline to Arkansas. Obviously, be uncommon, which is great because if you're a big-time player, Arkansas is probably far down on the list as far as schools you think is big time. So, how about doing something uncommon and becoming a Razorback? And I think this will be another one, running back U. And that stuff sticks too. I mean, Penn State for the last 20 to 25 years has been known as linebacker U.
Yeah.
And people still say that today, even though they've had dry spells and inconsistent play at linebacker.
Well, players will say that.
Yeah, exactly.
When they're being recruited and they commit to a school like a Penn State, or I always think of LSU, like, look who they had. Look what they did with these guys. I want to be part of that tradition.
Exactly.
So if you can have great running backs and this, being able to say the same thing, like, look at this long list of these guys that have been here and gone on to the NFL and done great things and had great seasons at Arkansas in the SEC West.
Yeah, exactly.
That's huge.
And the thing is cool about it, it spans over multiple coaches too.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was just a guy. Obviously, with Houston Nutt being a run-oriented guy, and then with Niall Davis, even though it was more of a pass-first offense, the fact that Niall in 2010 was one of the best backs in the country, and then Dennis Johnson was highly productive. They're both in the NFL. Niall, I think, will have a really significant role with Kansas City. I mean, Jamal Charles, his workload was pretty hefty last year. I think Niall will take some of that burden off. Dennis Johnson proved himself with Houston to a degree last year, and so even from the Petrino era, there's running backs. And obviously now with Coach Bielema, that's only going to go up with Alex Collins in a couple of years and Corliss Marshall and Jonathan Williams. So running back U, it spans over multiple coaches. That's why I really think it's fitting. And you're right, it's big for Arkansas. And we'll jump back over before we close house today on our CrossFit Russellville poll question. What's the biggest key to long-term success, Mattie, for Brett Bielema? I think you may have answered it earlier, but I'll let you go ahead and reiterate.
Yeah, well, it's kind of one of those questions. There are a million answers to that.
Yes.
And it's easy to just be like, winning. If you win, then you be good. Or if you recruit the players, then you will be good. But obviously it comes down to recruiting, and specifically for me, apart from keeping the in-state players, which I'm big on.
Yes.
I want to keep those guys. If they're good, if you're an O'Grady and you're really good, I want you to stay here.
Yes.
But apart from that, which I think he'll be doing, I want to see us continue to recruit Southern Florida and places like that where we really haven't had a footprint before.
Yeah.
And that we do all of a sudden now. If he can continue to recruit places like that and pull guys out like Alex Collins and JoJo Robinson and these guys, then I think that will speak a lot to the long-term success of Arkansas, because a lot of the players that come out of a Southern Florida are like a JoJo. They're super freak athlete types. They're not just utility type players.
Yeah.
We can get those other places. We can get our linemen elsewhere, but I would rather see us keep our foot in the door in Southern Florida. I love that.
That's a really good point, too. And Coach Pittman's had some success. Obviously, you lose Coach Partridge, which kind of hurts a little bit in Florida. But I agree with you because I've always questioned the narrative of, Texas. I mean, if you can get some of the better Texas players, fine. But Texas is a big state, but still, they only have so many big-time players. Texas, OU, and some of the other Texas schools,
Texas
obviously A&M now.
Tech,
So, a 3-star.
TCU.
Exit TCU, Baylor. A 3-star is a 3-star. I don't care if he's from Montana or if he's from Texas. And so if you're getting Texas 3-stars constantly, you might need to look at either improving your success in Texas or, finding other pipelines. With Florida, South Florida, a connection there would be huge. Coach Bielema and his staff has had success down there as well. I'll give my answer as we close up shop today. My answer to the CrossFit Russellville poll question is the ability to do more with less. That's what Coach Bielema did at Wisconsin. He's taken guys who were, a 2-star tight end, is now one of the best defensive players in the league, in J.J. Watt. And that ability, because I think the upside for recruiting is a little bit higher. I think they can do a little bit better, but I think it's going to max out pretty soon. And then the rest of it is going to have to come from your ability to develop players. I think that's the key for Coach Bielema. Maximize these players, get the most out of them. And I think that will be his key for his success at Arkansas, and really any coach here at Arkansas.
Yeah,
so
give him the Kiro Small treatment that we saw the photos of.
Yeah.
We want to see more of that.
Yeah.
And we will, too.
Get these guys.
Ben Herbert. Yeah.
Well, Ben Herbert's my guy. Get these guys physically built. Well, Mattie, I appreciate you sitting in today. Hopefully we can do it again sometime soon. Dave has done a sensational job. He's bumping us out here on today's show. For Mattie, Dave, I'm Weldon Braxton. We will see you. Mark will be back, and we'll see you on Monday. Take care and have a good weekend.